5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Hey everybody, Jam Creates here, doing another Commuter Cast. I'm driving home from work. It's Friday. Oh yeah, time for the weekend. Okay, that's the end of my singing career. That's all right. I'm getting a little giddy, getting a little silly, because it is Friday. It's the end of the work day. I'm going home. Time to enjoy my weekend. Enjoy my time with my family, have some fun, do some good stuff. What do you guys do on the weekend? Anybody work on the weekend? I used to work on the weekend all the time. It stinks. Actually, I didn't mind so much when I was single. It wasn't that big of a deal. But once you have a family, you want those days off with your family. All right, anyway, I'm digressing before I've even started. On to the business at hand. Today, I want to talk about whether or not... I'm going to talk about comic books again, because that's mostly what I talk about. I'm going to talk about comic books and the business of comic books. And I'm going to relate it to TV in a certain regard, because what I would like to talk about is, should comic books take the model of manga, or should they take the model of anime, as the kids call it? All I really mean by that, I don't mean anything about the art style, I don't mean anything about the storytelling or anything like that. Like, you can have that conversation if you want to. That's not really what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is, you can look at my speedometer. What I'm talking about is whether or not comic books should follow the rule that, like anime follows and manga follows, like have a story with an ending. I know that seems like a very difficult thing when you're a company like a Marvel, let's say, who's had characters that are around for 75 years. Do you end those stories? But I think you can, and I think you can still keep the characters around. For example, look at something like Dragon Ball. There was the original Dragon Ball manga, and of course later turned into a cartoon. And then there was Dragon Ball Z, and then they made movies, and they're still doing movies, and even a new series has come out. So the characters have been around, but you're telling a story. You're telling one story, and then you're getting in, you're telling your story, and you're getting out. It's not like a soap opera, which never ends, which is what American comic books generally are. They're like soap opera format, they just keep going and going and going. And I've said this about TV shows for years. Like, some TV shows need to just be started with an ending in mind. Just start it knowing it's going to end, and just run it for however long that story is going to take, and then be done with it. Let it just be this perfect story that has its entire thing, and it's just done, and everybody loves it afterwards. What really kind of got my attention with this whole thing, and really made me think about this, was years ago when I watched Gundam Wing. I was so used to watching... Really, at that point, the only anime I had really watched was movies. I watched anime movies. So it's a different thing than watching an anime series. And so I had only watched, American television. And basically American television's model is you start a show, and then you just keep it going until nobody wants to watch it anymore. You just keep going and going and going. Even if you have nowhere to go, if people are still watching it, you just keep on making it, because you can keep making money that way. Inevitably, by the end, nobody really likes it anymore. It's, the fan base has dwindled, the ratings crumble, and then eventually it just disappears, and nobody really even cares. Maybe it gets one little spike at the end, because everyone's like, oh, I remember that show. And then they'll be like, oh, I used to love that show, or whatever. Like, think of it like Lost. Like, Lost was a series that literally got lost along the way. It would have been better had they simply told their story, gotten in, gotten out. It would have probably been a classic. But instead, they had to just keep going because it was so popular. And unfortunately, that just meant the story just had to kind of like turn back in on itself. They had to introduce new things that they never intended in the first place and create twists and turns that probably never should have existed. And a lot of people lost interest, and then eventually you just had to end it. Isn't it better to have something just be what it's meant to be and then be over? And that's what Gundam Wing did for me. Was I watched Gundam Wing, and it was so good, and I really enjoyed it, and then it was over, and I was like, whoa, that's it? It's over? Like, there's no more? And then there was a movie, yeah, and the movie was okay. The movie wasn't great. The animation was really nice, but like, and the designs of the Gundams was like unbelievably cool. But the story wasn't like spectacular or anything. But you know, just knowing that there was a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it was it. That was the story they were telling. You know, it's one of the reasons why I love Cowboy Bebop so much. That is one of my absolute favorite shows of all time, of any kind. Because that show knew, here's how we're starting, here's our middle, and here's our end. And they just did it, they got in, and they got out. And yeah, they made the movie too afterwards. And again, same thing, the movie was okay, it wasn't great, it was fine. It was what it was. But I love that series, and I will watch that series over and over because it's so good. You know, and that's why people read, like, go back and they read runs of comic books. They're like, oh, I'll read this run, I'll read this storyline. Well, wouldn't it be better if all that filler in between didn't exist and you just had, like, these awesome storylines? You know, give people a break. You know, consumers don't have unlimited money, number one. And two, the stories just get lame. I mean, let's be honest. You know, you get stories where they start repeating themselves and they start doing the same plot just a little bit differently or whatever. And then you eventually you get these stories that people hate, and they just do them because they can't figure out what else to do. You know, it's the same reason why people die and come back to life a million times in comic books. And it's the same thing you get in soap operas. Characters die and come back. They die and come back. Now, the difference there is most of the time the characters die because the actor's contract was up and they didn't re-sign. And then, you know, they go off trying to do their own thing. They're not really that successful. And then they come back to soap operas a couple of years later. And, oh, look, someone, you know, Stone has returned from the grave. You know, or, you know, Ashlyn has woken up from her coma. You know, that kind of nonsense, you know. And you get that in comic books, not so much because of the actors, because, you know, there are no actors, but just because, like, they have nothing else to do. So they kill off a character and then they bring them back. Because it's like, what else are we going to do? We need to do something. And in a model where, you know, people don't own the characters they create, that's a whole nother problem. Why create a new character when, you know, maybe you'll get some royalty checks from it and stuff, but, like, it's not going to be the same as if you own that character wholesale. So it's definitely, like, kind of a thing to think about. Like, should comic books run in seasons, maybe? Or should they just put out, like, one big story and then be done? You know, like, depending on the character, I think that might work better. You know, some characters have never been able to really hold a monthly. They will get a monthly book. They'll give them a monthly title. It will last like 6-7 issues and then get canceled. And then they'll try it again a few years later, and similar thing will happen. You know, the number of issues may change, but the similar thing will happen. And you wonder, like, why is this character who is popular, let's say, when they appear in other people's books, why are they not able to maintain their own monthly book? And it's because it just doesn't fit the character. And so that character might be better served to simply get, like, a 3-issue limited series or something. Just tell a quick story. You know, if you have a good story for that character, tell it and be done and move on. And then, you know, a couple of years later, if you have another good story, say, hey, you remember that last story we did with, you know, so-and-so? That was really good. Hey, we got another one. Check it out. People would be pumped. People would get hyped, and they'd be like, all right, cool. I loved that last one. I'm getting this one too. How many issues is this? Oh, it's 4 issues this time? Cool. they know they're not in for this just, never-ending cycle of issue after issue after issue, never really leading anywhere. When you do something like that, you really believe that anything could happen. You believe the character could be in peril, because you know what? They could their book could just end, and that could be the end of them. I don't know if it's the answer. It's just a hypothesis. It's just something I'm throwing out there. But I do think for a lot of characters that would be better. It would definitely be a better way to do it than just the ongoing, never-ending cycle of monthly books. And especially when you've got certain characters that have 3 or 4 monthly books every month, that's like too much. Like, you're just grinding that character into the ground. And what are you doing that's really that interesting with that character that you need that many books? Chances are you're probably not doing anything super interesting in all of those books. You're just trying to milk the popularity of the character. And that's a shame, because you kind of just, you eventually just grind it into dust. And no one really cares anymore. So it's just a thing. I don't know. I feel like, when you read a manga has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Those stories end. Now some of them are incredibly long, but they do always have an ending. Spider-Man doesn't end. It never ends. And I'm okay with that if maybe you do it in bursts. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm nuts. But if I know that you're going to charge me $4 or $5 for a comic book, an issue, and there's literally no end in sight to me spending that money. I am basically just giving you $5 or $4 a month for the rest of my life if I want to follow the adventures of that character. That doesn't seem as appealing to me or as good of a deal as, you know what? You're going to read this new Spider-Man story. We're going to call it, Spider-Man Web of Destruction or whatever. And it's going to be, 4, 5 issues, 6 issues, whatever. It's going to be a really cool story featuring Spidey and his villains. And that's going to be... And then when it's over, it's over. And then there might not be another Spider-Man book for another, 3 months after that. I would be okay with that. And then when the new one comes out, 3, 4 months later, whatever it is, and you're like, hey, here's, Spider-Man, whatever you're going to call it, Spider-Man, I have lots of legs. I don't know. The many legs of Spider-Man. I'd probably go pick that up too. Because I've had the break, and I'm like, oh, I want to see what Spidey's up to next. And everyone could have, there can be an overarching mythology that rides along with these story arcs, and I'm not spending $5 every single month. And that, I think, would also encourage me, possibly, in the off months, to pick up something else. As I'm wrapping up reading, Spider-Man Web of Destruction, as I'm reading, issue 3 and 4, you're advertising in there for, let's say, a new story featuring, Black Panther or something. And it's Black Panther, has a new story, has a new story coming out called, Black Panther, Fear of a Black Planet, where he meets Chuck D. No, I'm kidding. But, whatever. You have this new Black Panther, storyline, and you're like, oh, that looks kind of cool. You're seeing the ads for it for a couple of months in those other Spider-Man books, and you're like, that looks pretty cool. I think I might check that out. And then, hey, guess what? The same month the last issue of my Spider-Man book comes out, the first issue of that Black Panther series comes out. And I'm in the store already, and I'm picking up my final issue because I really want to see how that story ends. And hey, oh, here's that Black Panther book they were advertising. Here's issue 1, and this is how many issues? This is 5 issues? Oh, yeah, maybe I'll pick that up too. Now I'm buying 2 books that month, and I'm going to probably buy that Black Panther book for the next 3, 4 months, however many issues it ends up being. And then by the time that's done, oh, guess what? Spider-Man, The Many Legs of Spider-Man is out. I want that too, so I'm going to buy that now. You can cycle, and you don't have to have just one at a time, obviously. You can have more than one. Marvel's got so many characters. I mean, obviously, you can do that. And you could even have, multiple series that are running concurrently, but at least, like, you're not, like, overloading the comic book shops with books that nobody wants. You're not overloading the consumer with books that they don't want. You're not making people buy this ongoing series where the character is so inconsistent because it's being written by different people every, 3-4 months, 5 months. There's a new creative team, and you can't even understand what's happening because the character who one day was like dark and serious is now being like goofy and silly. Like, it's that kind of thing. Like, you want consistency in your characters, and so I just feel like I don't know. I feel like it's a possibility of something you could do. You could still have your monthly books, and then maybe with some of your other books, try out this kind of thing with other characters. Maybe not necessarily with all your main flagship titles if you're afraid to do that, which I would understand if they were scared of doing that all at once. Like, that would be a pretty big commitment to make. But it's just a thought, the having an ending. Doing comic books like manga or anime runs where it's an end. I don't know. What do you think? Let me know what you think. If you like this video, like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. Check me out on Twitter. I'm at jam_creates. I'm on DeviantArt at Jam Creates there too. I have a Jam Creates page on Facebook. You can check that out too. I'm obviously here on YouTube. I'm on Minds. I'm at Jam Creates. I am all over the internet. And that's it. I'm home. I'm going to have dinner, and I'm going to enjoy my weekend. I'll be making some new videos. I've got, it came out on a Wednesday, issue 3 for Halloween. I definitely want to check that out, and I'll be doing a review of that. I love Alterna's books, so I'm sure I'm probably going to like that one too. And that's it. Car's off. I'm home. I'm done. Peace out, homie.